Good afternoon and welcome. I'm Russ Lambert back with you again with another thought or two. I've named this channel Opinions and Other Stuff, and today, opinion is what you're going to get, at least in this recording. You know, I know myself, and I know it bothers me when I make a mistake, when I create a mess that I can't clean up myself. It could be something as simple as spilling a glass of water while I'm having a meal at the cafe. If that happens, I don't ask somebody working there to come clean up my mess. I ask them for a rag so I can clean it up myself. But if they do come and clean it up, I feel embarrassed. I hate it when somebody else has to pick up behind me, even if they're getting paid to do it. If I make a mess, or if I'm part of a mess, I'd like to be the one that cleans it up. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that and the way a couple of people are approaching something else along that line here in just a minute.
Supreme Court returned to work on Monday for the first time since liberal Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg's death, her seat on the bench still draped in black, and with Senate Republicans racing to replace her with a conservative before the November 3rd election. With 8 justices rather than the usual 9, the court heard arguments via teleconference, but it was a case they refused to hear, an appeal by former Kentucky County Clerk Kim Davis, that grabbed the most headlines. Davis is a devout Christian who gained national attention in 2015 for refusing to issue marriage licenses to same-sex couples after the court legalized gay marriage nationwide. She had been seeking to toss out a lower court ruling that she could be sued by 2 same-sex couples. Although the High Court on Monday turned away her appeal, 2 conservative justices who voted against legalizing same-sex marriage in 2015 used the opportunity to renew their objections to it. In an opinion released Monday, Justices Samuel Alito and Clarence Thomas said that the 2015 landmark same-sex marriage case Obergefell versus Hodges continues to have, quote, ruinous consequences for religious liberty. The stance taken by Thomas and Alito comes as the Senate is moving forward quickly with the confirmation process for President Donald Trump's Supreme Court nominee, Amy Coney Barrett, a favorite of Christian conservatives. If confirmed, she would cement a 6-3 conservative majority. But the timetable of her hearing before the Senate Judiciary Committee is now unclear, with at least 3 Republican senators testing positive for the coronavirus, 2 of them members of the committee, and both of whom were present at the White House event in which Trump announced Barrett as his pick. Several attendees of that event, including Trump, have since tested positive. Judiciary Committee Chair Lindsey Graham, however, has said that Barrett's hearing will go forward as planned on October 12th, with committee members given the option to attend in person or virtually.
Even the Supreme Court is not above mistakes. There's been any number of cases that the Supreme Court has decided just completely wrong, and more often than not, they come back at some point in the future and make things right. I'm going to give one example real quick. Plessy versus Ferguson was an 1896 decision of the United States Supreme Court. It upheld the constitutionality of racial segregation laws for public facilities, providing the segregated facilities were equal in quality. This was a doctrine that became known as the separate but equal doctrine. This decision, it gave legitimacy to many state laws that had been passed, that had been put into place, that required racial segregation, predominantly in the South, following the era of Reconstruction. And truthfully, this decision has been regarded as one, if not the worst decision the court ever made, at least one of them. But Plessy, 1896, it was the law of the land until 1954. Brown versus the Board of Education of Topeka. That ruling determined that separate educational facilities are inherently unequal. And literally, it just cut the legs out from underneath Plessy. And it should have. That was rightfully so. Now, I didn't go into a lot of detail in either case, and that wasn't my intent. The purpose was to illustrate that the court is made up of flesh and blood individuals, and flesh and blood individuals are subject to mistakes. But thankfully, like we've already pointed out, thankfully, the court has shown a willingness to go back and clean up those mistakes when they happen. And I've talked about myself, how I hate for somebody to clean up after me. I don't want somebody to have to do that. But if I make the mess, I want to fix it. I recently read an article that shows me there's at least 2 men who share my sentiments. 2 Supreme Court justices, Clarence Thomas and Samuel Alito. They were dissenters in a Supreme Court ruling that passed, but they were still part of that ruling, and it's obvious that it bothers both of them still to this day. They have both expressed a desire to be able to go back and clean up that mess, and they've earned all kinds of respect from me in the process. Obergefell versus Hodges. I think I'm saying that right. Obergefell versus Hodges. June 26, 2015. The Supreme Court handed down a decision 5-4 that effectively gave the middle finger to all people everywhere who embrace religious liberties. It went even further and ignored the fact we have a 10th Amendment to the Constitution. But Justices Ruth Bader Ginsburg, Stephen Breyer, Sonia Sotomayor, Elena Kagan, and Anthony Kennedy. These were the 5 people who took it upon themselves to shove the legalization of perversion down the throat of America. And still to this day, I'll say shame on every one of them. Now, 4 justices showed a measure of common sense and a sense of decency in this ruling. Justices Antonin Scalia, Clarence Thomas, Samuel Alito, and Chief Justice John Roberts dissented in this case, all of them pretty strongly. Justice Alito wrote about his concern that this ruling would be used, quote, to attack the beliefs of those who disagree with same-sex marriage, who will risk being labeled as bigots and treated as such by governments, employers, and schools, leading to bitter and lasting wounds. Now, when we think back these words written 5 years ago, it almost gives them a status of being prophetic. I believe we've all seen incidents in the news that will attest to that. For example, try to stand on your principles and refuse to cater a same-sex marriage. See how that goes for you. Okay, at the time, Samuel Alito said, most Americans understandably will cheer or lament today's decision because of their views on the issue of same-sex marriage. But all Americans, whatever their thinking on that issue, should worry about what the majority's claim of power portends. In his dissent, Justice Clarence Thomas wrote, the principle of substantive due process, which the majority referenced, invites judges to do exactly what the majority has done here, to roam at large in the constitutional field, guided only by their personal views as to the fundamental rights protected by that document. In doing so, the judiciary strays from the Constitution's text, subverts the democratic process, and exalts judges at the expense of the people from whom they derive their authority. In simpler words, He's saying these 5 justices that ruled in the majority here, they just made up their mind how they wanted things to be, and then went on a fishing expedition through the Constitution to find some way to twist the Constitution to fit their vision. And sadly enough, Obergefell is not the only time that this has happened in history. Justice Thomas and Justice Alito have written recently. The court, talking about Obergefell, the court has created a problem only it can fix. Until then, Obergefell will continue to have ruinous consequences for religious liberty. Well, maybe someday. I hope I live long enough to see it. Be good to one another, and God bless you.